Why were the brothers who founded McDonald's eventually kicked out of their own company, while the man who truly built it into a $200 billion empire was a milkshake machine salesman? Why was Coca-Cola invented by a pharmacist, yet its $250 billion empire was built by a businessman who bought the formula for just $2,300? These individuals created hundreds of billions in value, but ended up with mere pennies for themselves. This isn't a coincidence, it's a pattern, and it might be happening to you right now. You go to work every day, secure clients for your company, hit your KPIs, and collect a paycheck at the end of the month. You might think that paycheck represents your true value, but perhaps that is exactly why you aren't making big money. The value you create has never truly stayed in your hands. Today, we are going to break down the fundamental formula of wealth creation. This isn't some cliché about choices mattering more than hard work, nor is it about luck or background. I want you to truly understand why money flows to others while bypassing you, and what you critically need to recognize if you want to be wealthy. To understand wealth, we must first answer a basic question. What exactly is money? Most people intuitively think of money as an object, something you must earn, grab, or hoard. But think about it carefully. When your salary hit your bank account last month, where did it go? It went to paying rent, buying takeout, and paying off credit card bills. Then, your landlord used that rent to pay their mortgage, and the food delivery platform used your money to pay its drivers. Money has never actually stopped in anyone's hands. Therefore, money is not an object. Money is a river. It is constantly flowing from one person to another, never stopping. Once you view the world from this perspective, the nature of making money changes completely. The question is no longer, how do I make money? The real question is, money is always flowing. Why should it flow to me? There is a fundamental law governing the direction of this river of money. Whether it's a multi-billion-dollar corporate merger or you going downstairs to buy a bowl of noodles, the direction of money is always the same. It flows from the person with a problem to the person who solves that problem, with no exceptions. Since the essence of making money for everyone is solving other people's problems, why does one person make $3,000 a month while another makes $3 million a year for doing the same? It's because the volume of money that flows to you is controlled by three valves. Multiplying them together gives you the wealth formula. Your income, the scale of demand, X. Your irreplaceability, X. Your need to be physically present. If any of these valves in the formula is close to zero, you won't make big money. But if any of them is amplified, your income can double. The vast majority of people spend their entire lives frantically twisting the middle valve, studying hard, trying to get promoted, and attempting to make themselves more valuable and harder to replace. This isn't a bad thing, of course, but it's only one of the three valves. Perhaps you've never stopped to consider, do I have two other valves I could be opening? Have I been making a mistake from step one? Let's start with the first valve, the scale of demand. The logic of this valve is very intuitive. Find a need that a massive amount of people have. If you stand by a massive river, even if you scoop water with the most ordinary bucket, you will gather more water than someone using a golden bucket by a tiny stream. Hearing this, you might think, isn't this just saying that making the right choice is more important than hard work? Well, you've only seen half the picture. Simply choosing a crowded market isn't enough. You have to look at a much more critical factor. What is the cost for these people if they can't solve this problem? Take someone who designs PowerPoint presentations, for example. Helping a college student with a class project might be worth $10, but designing a pitch deck for an entrepreneur's investor meeting could be worth $10,000. Where does the gap come from? It comes from the client's situation. If a college student gives a bad presentation, they lose a few grades. If an entrepreneur gives a bad presentation, they could lose out on tens of millions in funding. Similarly, as a content creator, teaching Excel skills versus teaching investing will result in vastly different incomes. You might say teaching investing is harder. It is, but the difficulty might only be 2 or 3 times greater, while the monetization potential is more than 10 times higher. The fear of not knowing how to invest is much larger than the fear of not knowing how to make a spreadsheet. Income disparities are never priced based strictly on gaps in ability. The premium comes from the other party's fear and the cost of failing to solve their problem. There is a US company called Liquid Death. They literally just sell water, but they put it in tall aluminum cans featuring skulls and axes, making it look exactly like a can of beer. In 2024, the company was valued at $1.4 billion, Why? Because people who don't drink alcohol feel out of place holding a plastic water bottle at a bar, so they are willing to pay a premium for a water brand that looks like beer. Ultimately, money is a cost, desire is a cost, and saving face is a cost. The higher the cost of the problem for the other party, the more valuable you are. So, the key to the first valve is, don't start by thinking about what you can do. Start by looking at what large groups of people are stressing over, assess the cost of that problem, and then think about what you can provide. Choosing the right demand is important, but you are never the only person standing by the big river. If 100 people are crowded by the same river, why should the water flow to you and not someone else? This brings us to the second valve, your irreplaceability. How hard are you to bypass? Consider John, who has been doing business translations for 5 years. His English is excellent and his work quality is good, but he finds clients are always price shopping. The market is saturated with business translators. They might use him today, but switch tomorrow if they find someone 20% cheaper. His skills aren't the issue, yet he can't retain clients. Now look at another translator, Lou. Lou decided to dive deep specifically into the medical device industry. He mastered all the regulations, terminology, and registration processes. He can tell a client, if you translate this sentence this way, the FDA will reject your application. As a result, Lou's clients never price shop. The money they'd save by switching to someone cheaper wouldn't come close to covering the risk of their application being denied. The cost of bypassing him is simply too high. How skilled you are and how hard you are to bypass are two entirely different things. What Lou did is the first method of making yourself hard to bypass, combinatorial scarcity. By layering translation skills with specialized industry knowledge in medical devices, he created an intersection with almost no competition. You don't need to be number one in any single field. But when you stack 2 or 3 things together, it's not that others can't learn it. It's that reaching your specific position would take them years. There is a second method, trust barriers. You've definitely seen people like this. Their skills might not be the absolute best, but clients insist on working strictly with them. It's not because clients can't find anyone else. It's because once trust is established, the psychological cost of switching is extremely high. Skills can be learned, but trust cannot be copy-pasted. Think about yourself. If you quit your job tomorrow, how long would it take to find your replacement? If the answer is, we could find someone pretty easily, then the water won't specifically flow to you. At this point, you might feel like the concept of making money is pretty clear. Find a big river, make yourself hard to bypass, and you'll get rich. But I have a harsh truth for you. Let's look back at the 3 people from the beginning. The McDonald brothers and the Coca-Cola pharmacist. They stood by the biggest rivers and were virtually irreplaceable. They maxed out the first 2 valves, yet the vast majority of the money went into other people's pockets. Why? Because there is a truth about making money that many people go their whole lives without realizing. The value you create is one thing. Who ends up capturing that value is an entirely different thing. In economics, these 2 concepts are called value creation and value capture. They are 2 completely different skill sets. Most people spend their lives practicing the former without ever realizing the latter exists. Shift the perspective back to yourself. You spend 3 months designing a project proposal. Your boss uses it to land a massive contract, and the client relationship, the recurring revenue, and the profit all stay within the company's system. If you look at any industry, the person making the most money is rarely the one doing the work the best. It's the person who owns the system. Therefore, the second valve isn't just about making yourself stronger. You have to figure out, where does the value you create ultimately end up? If the answer is that most of it flows away, then the stronger you get, the more money other people make off you. What you truly need to change is your relationship with value. How do you change it? That leads to the third valve. Does solving the problem require your physical presence? As long as you must personally be there every time, your ability is forever locked to your physical body. The moment you stop, everything goes to zero. Only when you find a way to remove yourself from the equation does value truly start accumulating for you. 10,000 years ago, the most important transition in human civilization was moving from hunting to farming. The logic of hunting is, you catch a rabbit today, you eat today. If you don't, you starve, and tomorrow you start from scratch. Working hard yesterday doesn't make today any easier. Labor is a one-time, consumable resource. Farming is completely different. You spend months plowing, sowing, and watering the land. During this time, you get zero harvest. But when autumn arrives, the yield far exceeds the input. Most importantly, you can save some of the grain to use as seeds to plant even more land next year. Today's labor becomes tomorrow's asset. Your labor begins to compound. The way the vast majority of people make money, earning a monthly salary, charging by the hour, getting paid per gig, is fundamentally hunting. If you stop for a day, your income drops for a day. Last month's hard work won't add a single cent to this month's income. But some people do things differently. In Japan, there is a woman named Marie Kondo. Initially, she went door to door helping people organize their rooms, charging tens of thousands of yen per session, managing at most 2 homes a day. This is a classic example of using a bucket to fetch water. Later, she turned her methods into a book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which was translated into 40 languages and sold tens of millions of copies. Then, Netflix hired her to film a reality show broadcast globally. Her ability to organize rooms didn't change, but she decoupled this ability from herself, turning it into books and shows. While she sleeps, millions of people around the world are paying for her expertise. The McDonald's example from earlier follows the exact same logic. Ray Kroc, the salesman who bought McDonald's, didn't make a better burger. What he did was deconstruct the process of making a burger into a highly standardized procedure, turning it into a system that belonged to him. From that moment on, expansion was no longer limited by any single individual. And the brothers who invented McDonald's? Their operational skills were superior, but they never turned those skills into an asset of their own, which is why they didn't make the big money in the end. Turn experience into products, turn methods into content, and decouple your abilities from yourself to create something that functions without relying on you. This is the shift from hunting to farming, and this is how the third valve is opened. So, why are most people still hunting? Because hunting carries an incredibly powerful temptation: certainty. If you do the work today, you get a guaranteed reward today. This instant feedback is addictive. Farming, on the other hand, means you have to spend months or even a year working on something with absolutely zero return during that period. No one is paying you a salary, and no one is telling you if you're going in the right direction. You aren't even sure if it will eventually yield a harvest. Most people give up during this blank period. What truly holds most people back isn't a lack of ability or knowledge. It is an addiction to certainty. Hearing this, you might think, so are you saying I absolutely must become an entrepreneur or build a media empire to make good money? Actually, no. Not everyone has to fully open all 3 valves. This is something a lot of business gurus won't tell you. The third valve, in particular, doesn't need to be opened by everyone, and in fact, many people ruin the first 2 valves by trying to open the third one prematurely. Take a plastic surgeon making $1 million a year. He spends his entire life physically present in the operating room, never opening the third valve. Do you think he's living a bad life? For the average person, he is doing incredibly well. That's because his first valve is massive. The desire for beauty is a fundamental need. A lot of people have it, and they are willing to pay top dollar for it. Furthermore, he has pushed his second valve to the absolute limit. In his specific niche, patients ask for him by name, and the trust is so deep that no one else will do. With 2 valves maxed out, it doesn't matter if the third one remains closed. But if he wanted to go from making $1 million a year to $10 million a year, relying solely on his own 2 hands would be impossible. At that point, he would have to open the third valve, open his own clinic, build a team, train apprentices, and turn his experience and methods into the clinic's assets rather than keeping them confined to his own hands. Conversely, if someone creates an online course and successfully opens the third valve, meaning the course sells while they aren't there, but the topic they chose has very little demand, and their content could easily be taught by someone else, then 2 of the 3 valves are close to 0. The multiplied result will still be very small. Therefore, what you truly need to do isn't to chase all 3 things simultaneously, but to first ask yourself, where am I stuck? If you don't lack ability and clients recognize your value, but your income has hit a ceiling you just can't break through, then the problem is highly likely with the first valve. You need to find a bigger river. If your direction is fine, but you are constantly being replaced or having your prices undercut, then your second valve is lacking. You need to make yourself harder to bypass. Finally, if the first 2 valves are solid but your income is strictly tied to your time and requires your physical presence every single time, it's time to think about the third valve. Finding out where you are stuck and focusing your energy on twisting that specific valve is far more useful than trying to do everything and mastering nothing. In the end, making money is simple in theory. The underlying logic is just this formula. But it is hard in practice. The difficulty lies in every action taken from understanding the concept to actual execution. True knowledge only comes from practice. Wishing you all great prosperity.